So I did this studied caricature of Robert Englund, the actor that played Freddy Krueger in the movies. I wanted to do a much more detailed sketch than I have on my other videos, and so I just started off going over it with a pencil, holding the pencil sort of like I would hold it as a paintbrush, and then I really didn't like that first sketch. So I went over it again with a color pencil. And I'm just trying to improve the sketch as I go. And you'll see this is a theme of this video. So then I started inking in the caricature, and I started with the glasses. There's a cool trick when drawing someone who has glasses. The glasses become sort of like a map that helps you draw in the eyes. When you look at the photo, if the eye is touching the top and right hand rim of the glasses, then you can draw the eye in that corner, and you're going to be able to catch the likeness a lot quicker. Now, as you watch me inking this in, I just have to tell you in advance that I really messed up this video toward the end when I was coloring it in Procreate. And I'll let you find out if you watch that far how I messed it up, but just apologizing in advance. I think this video has enough value in it that I'll have to keep it with the mistakes in it. Okay, it's all done and inked in. It's good, but it's not really a caricature, and I know I can improve it. So let's put it into Procreate and see what I can do to it. Right now it's a stylized portrait, but I want to make it more of a true caricature. To do that, I wanted to use the sketch over top method. So the first thing I did was to lower the opacity of my sketch. The next thing I did was to create a layer above the original sketch, and also I like to choose a different color line, and then I sketch over my original sketch and looking for natural ways that I can exaggerate it. Once I had that done, then I lowered the opacity on that second sketch, created a third layer above that and a red line, and sketched over it again. And I'm looking for ways to exaggerate even more, but natural ways. In other words, his face is long, so I made it a little longer. His jaw is kind of narrow, so I made it narrow. And every time I sketch over top of this, it's getting more and more exaggerated. On this next step, I flip the canvas. Sometimes just by flipping the canvas, you can immediately see problems in their perspective. The next thing I did was to form another layer above it, and then to kind of go over the planes of the face, which is the negative space. It's sort of like the Riley rhythms. And then, believe it or not, I lowered the opacity again. I created yet another layer on top of that, and I sketched over it again, just incrementally exaggerating it a little bit more. This is probably getting monotonous by now. I keep sketching over and over and over the thing, but in this case, it's a great method to get that exaggeration and keep the likeness. At this point in the process, I'm finally ready to start digitally inking it. And I just start working that in, and I'm paying attention to the line work as I go. I'm trying to make sure every line is sort of tapered at the end. Sometimes it's been called like a dagger stroke. I'm looking for opportunities for thin lines and thick lines. And at this point, I'm just having fun with it. Sometimes it's just fun to draw and focus on getting these really nice lines that are tapered and thick and thin. I just put on some music or an audio book and draw. And I just want to encourage anybody that's watching this video, if you love to draw and you're not quite where you want to be yet, just continue to go for it. There's nothing you can't learn how to do if you practice and if you enjoy the process. Just so you know, back in 2012 and before that, I was a truck driver. But I knew that I was always supposed to do something with my art and with the love for drawing that I had. And so one day I just decided that I'm going to start practicing again, and I am going to go for it and try to become a full-time artist. So on this point of the time-lapse video, I am putting in the flat colors. I've created a layer just for flat colors. That means color with no gradient or shading of any kind. Then above that layer, I create another layer. I call it a color variation layer, because there are parts of the face that have yellow on it. There are parts of the face that have like a blush pink, and there may be other parts of the face that have like a slight bluish tint. And so I'm adding those type of variations on a layer above the flat color. And I have to apologize again, like I said earlier in this video, I had made some horrible mistakes filming this video. I guess the light in the room was changing, and the exposure of the camera kept changing on my iPad. And so right now you see it's kind of washed out and you can't really see the color. That is a problem with the camera, and I apologize. And I promise to do better on the next video. There was no way for me to know that until I watched the video back afterwards. And when you're doing a drawing, it's like you can't recreate a piece of art exactly, especially one that you like. And so I decided just to keep the video like this. But please let me know in the comments if the mistake ruins the video, or if it still has some value to it, and I appreciate that. But actually, this is kind of an illustrated lesson on art. Sometimes you just have to complete what you're working on and get it out there, even though it's imperfect. And then each time improve on what you're doing when it comes to a work of art. Just like this video was imperfect, and my drawing is not the best drawing in the world, but I liked it. It was good for what it was, and I just want to get it out there. Does that make sense? The next step in the process after the color variation layer is to make a layer above that, set it to multiply, and then start working in the shadows. Actually, in this drawing, I did 2 multiply layers, one for drop shadows and the other for contour shadows. And shadows are really easy because all the work came during the sketch phase. Now that I'm doing shadows, I'm really just looking at the shadows on the photo and recreating them. The hard work was back during the sketch. And the exposure on this video is going to come in and out, but at the end of it, I'm going to show you a good shot of what the color looked like when it was finished. But after I get all my shadows in, then I start working in the highlights. That's the last phase that I usually do when I'm doing a studied caricature like this. And in this case, I use 2 highlight layers. On one of them, just the natural highlights I see on the photo, and then on the other highlight layer, I did the rim light, which is right on the edge of his face, right on the edge of his profile, and on the edge of his nose. And I made sure that those were on a separate layer. Usually I put them on the same layer, but in this drawing, I was just having fun with it. So just to tell you a little bit more of my story, when I left truck driving, I was in Texas at the time. I moved back to Florida, where I was raised, and instead of looking for a new truck driving job, I applied at Disney World and Busch Gardens. And the people at Disney World called me back first. It was a group of caricature artists run by a guy named Keyl, and they were awesome, and working there was a lot of fun. And I was living the dream, a caricature artist, but that first year, I was dead broke. To be honest, I made a lot less money than I did as a truck driver, but I was living the dream, so I was going to stick with it. And the next year I made a little bit more money, but I was still broke. But I continued to stick with it. I refused to quit, even though I was tempted to go back to truck driving. And now, 10 years later, I make more money as a caricature artist than I ever did as a truck driver. So it's always worth it to follow your dreams. So here's a good close-up of how the drawing turned out. It's not perfect, but I really like this one. Let me know in the comments if you liked anything about it, if you got anything good out of this video. and please let me know what kind of tutorial you'd like me to do next, or what you want me to talk about, or if you have any questions. Thanks, and I'll see you on the next one.